But there's only 3 things that we focus on. That's your attitude, your thoughts, and your actions.
You're listening to Good is in the Details. I'm Gwendolyn Dolske, and this is the podcast where we learn what we didn't know in the spirit of Socrates, all with the aim of a more knowledgeable life, a happy life. In this episode today, I have teamed up with the women's networking group, The Modern Day Wife. Once again, we're calling this Business Details, and I had the opportunity to interview 4 women entrepreneurs to hear about their origin story, how they handle obstacles, how their business is an expression of themselves, and what advice do they have to young entrepreneurs, and how they carved out space for themselves to create. Gives us a window into a positive disposition. How do we handle our struggles? How do we handle things when they don't work out? And also, if we're an outlier, how do we carve out space for ourselves in this world and be creative? And what is our support system? Aristotle in his Ethics had said that to be good, we have to have the habits of the good. And we don't want to just be good, but we want to be good as good people are. So with this episode, what I want you to get out of it is that you're hearing the success stories and all of the work underneath that success to give you some inspiration. Just before we get started, I want to let you know of something exciting that I've been working on. Have you been listening to podcasts? You listen to Good is in the Details and you have an idea. You want to do a podcast, but where do you get started? I created an online course and I'm going to have a link in the show notes so that you can get started on your idea. And we'll learn everything from audience growth, content creation, monetizing, and working with other podcasters. You can also go to goodisinthedetails.com to find out more. Okay, now let's start on our business details with these incredible women. We've got Megan, Jen, Tracey, and Ashunta. We're going to learn all about their business, all about their success, and their advice. Jen Sugermeyer, welcome to Good is in the Details.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about your company, Ada Cosmetics. What is the origin story of your business?
Actually had a long career in IT. So this was really a big pivot, but transformative moment in my life happened when I got sober back in 2018. I went on a big quest of just self-love and personal development. I started writing personal development books and doing motivational speaking and public speaking and all of that. And I found that there was a bit of a disconnect with reaching some people, not all people. But what I realized is that people can put a price on things, but they don't put a price on their happiness. And I did find it a bit frustrating sometimes that I seem to care more about people than they seem to care about themselves. And this product that we'll talk about, it just sort of came about. And then one day I thought, what if I could reach people through this transformative product? And it's a way to combine the tangible with the intangible. So this tangible thing that we all do every single day with a mindset element behind it. And so it's almost like a backdoor of reaching people. So the company stands on everything you need is within you and in the natural world around you. And so we're building a company around that.
First, I want to say congratulations on your sobriety. I know that that's
Thank
a
you.
really, really tough journey.
It's a long road.
Yeah. What was the impetus for the sobriety?
I say it casually. It actually took me 10 years to get sober. So I never bought more alcohol than I could drink for that night. I never identified with that person. It's a tricky thing, the disease of alcoholism. I had a very good corporate job. I was leading global teams. I was reporting into the chief information officer, which is, one of the highest levels that you can achieve. I was trailblazing as a female in a male-dominated industry. In many respects, I was doing very, very well. I had my top secret clearance. I was in Afghanistan for a while. There was a lot of things that I could talk about on my resume that looked good. But behind the scenes, things were really falling apart. And I kept, true story, I've practiced for speeches in jail for the CEO.
Wow.
And yes, you heard that right. So talk about unmanageability. I was there. And so it was only a matter of time until things were going to break and fall apart. And that wasn't a one-off occasion. And so, but addiction is, it can be a hard one to break. And it took me 10 years. And there were 7 words that actually changed my entire life. And I strongly believe on those. And I know we're going to dig into those here in a little bit. It was all about the connection to oneself. And so it's been an incredible journey. But yeah, my life was falling apart. I wasn't where I wanted to be. And I knew I had so much more potential to offer. It was that internal disconnect.
I'm really glad that you're saying this because the expression of success, people don't really understand that there are like layers and a hole behind the scene. And so in one area of your life that you're describing that appeared to be successful, it wasn't until you did the internal work and then you did this pivot, and now your work in Ada Cosmetics is also an expression of that pivot and that healing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely. And I can see it now. I didn't see it then, but I think the level of dysfunction behind the scenes correlated with the success. And this is my case specifically, but I do believe that the more things were falling apart, the more I push myself to kind of look over here. Don't notice all these things, right? And I was kind of hiding those. I now see and believe that there's a correlation between those two.
So when it comes to transforming yourself, how does the cosmetics media come into play?
Yeah, I think if we teach ourselves small habits, right? I mean, some things can look daunting, even sobriety. They talk about one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. And if we can teach ourselves just small little habits and how the culmination of those over time can make a big impact. Understanding that what we do today impacts tomorrow, and just kind of some of these fundamental just tips and tricks and mindset. If we can put an underpinning of those into our messaging, into how we treat ourselves, and when we start to look at maybe cosmetics a little bit differently and start to realize that there's better things that are out there for us. And when we invest in ourselves, then we can reap the rewards. And it's just small little changes like that. Then we can, over time, compound and it can be massive changes to someone's life. And it's really all about elevating people's experiences in life is what we're passionate about.
In your journey, when things have felt like a bit of a slump or an obstacle, where do you turn to now?
I took the word failure out of my vernacular. And I don't know if that was you're kind of talking around the word, but I'll use that word in this sense. I think when things don't turn out the way that we planned, however you want to describe that word, it can feel like a punch in the gut. I was 30 years old and I already had a divorce and, obviously was talked about my arrests and just things that had happened. And I was like, oh, punch in the gut. And I really had to change my mindset around everything that doesn't turn out the way that I expect it to. And when I started to grow through what I would go through and realizing that everything was just a building block, everything looked a lot different. And I believe that, when things don't turn out the way we expect them to, that one of two things are happening, right? Or a combination of the both. But A, there's a growth opportunity, or B, there's a course correction. And if you just kind of learn to let go, if you start to focus on, and I'll get into what ADA stands for, but there's only 3 things that we focus on. That's your attitude, your thoughts, and your actions. And if you focus on those 3 things, then you can get in the driver's seat of your life. And we get so focused on all these other things like, oh my gosh, I got laid off, and oh, this happened, and we don't actually control those. You have to learn to let those go. And so that's what ADA stands for, is attitude, thoughts, and actions. Maybe a bit long of an answer, but
Perfect.
I truly believe that failure doesn't have to exist, and that you can grow through what you go through and just focus on the things that you do control.
Yeah. I mean, there are times in my life where it felt like everything was falling apart. And when I look back on those, it all worked out. I mean,
Totally.
I've told my students this. I'm like, I don't know how, but trust me, when things don't seem like they're working out, they are actually working out, because it just opens these other avenues that maybe you hadn't even considered before, and they end up being better.
Yeah. 100. I mean, how many times have we heard people say, oh, I got laid off? And you're like, yeah, but you kind of hated that job. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh my gosh, I have this great job. I love my boss. I got a raise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you hear that all the time, but we get so into we're trying to hold that thing. But the universe is like, no, I've got something better for you. Just let it go. I got this,
Yeah.
So,
and you focus on your talents and your relationships. Well, what are you most proud of when it comes to Ada Cosmetics? I'd love to know.
I love the stories that I hear. And honestly, I really didn't envision some of the verticals that we would be in, if that's the right way to describe it. But talking to busy moms that are like, oh my gosh, I have 5 kids and 3 have COVID. And the only peace that I get is when I apply my skincare with the jade applicator. And, or I had such bad allergies and I use the jade applicator and now I can breathe. And, and maybe some of this wasn't the intention behind, what was being designed, but just hearing the way that it's been able to add value. I think that's, to me, what I'm most proud of and what keeps me going. I just love hearing those success stories.
How did you come up with the idea?
Funny story. So you remember back in COVID when like Clubhouse was popular and everybody was, everybody was doing these, Instagram lives. Well, I followed this lady on Clubhouse or something or other, and she was going live on Instagram. Watched her and she was doing her makeup with a spoon. And I was intrigued and she was talking about business. But I was like, what is she doing with the spoon? So I went and tried it and I loved it. It felt amazing and it was cool and it just fit into my eye sockets and the curves in my face. And I thought, well, this is great. And I did it for a week and I thought, well, it's a little weird because I got a spoon sitting on my counter. And I thought, well, they have these jade rollers. I just bought my sister one. Why wouldn't you create something out of jade? It's not a new concept for people to put jade on their face. It's a new concept to apply skincare and makeup, but it's not a new concept to apply jade. And so that's when I started 3D modeling and just really pouring into it. And then fast forward 3 years, we have the patent and we're off to the races.
That's so exciting. Tell me about your team around your work.
Yeah, so we're actually global at this point, which is kind of fun to say. But so there's one of our girls, she's in Portugal actually, and she works remote. Yeah, we're a small team. We're still growing and we rely on, affiliates and things like that as well. We've put a lot of time and money into the, affiliate program and trying to really make that robust so that we can grow through other ways instead of having to hire on. Because when you're a smaller company, when you're a newer company, certainly financials come into play. Yeah, so it's a small team, but it's fun. It's growing, and we always love to get interns. And we're about to hire a new marketing company, and we're small but mighty. And I'm 6'1", and I like to wear heels, and so wherever I am, there's going to be a presence. So,
I love it.
And I shout it from the rooftop. So yeah,
I love it. What have you learned about yourself through this pivot, through this business venture that, I don't know, maybe kind of has surprised you? Like, what have you unearthed about yourself that you couldn't have imagined 10, 20 years ago?
Well, I never would have suspected. So I've always been in a male-dominated industry, and now I'm smack dab in the middle of the female industry. I mean, there's men too, but predominantly women. I guess that's a really great question. I do believe that I can do anything, and I've always had that can-do attitude. But I will say that I've certainly been challenged in certain areas. I am more of a visionist, a creator, the speaker, the road mapping person. And when it comes to growth of a business and networking and all of this, it's, business development. It's not that I don't possess some of those skills. It's just not where I find my joy. And so I'm getting challenged in certain areas that I probably would have overlooked that I was able to do, if that makes sense. Just kind of participate in various marketing and business development strategies and things like that, because that's never really been where my was. I think I certainly can have a personality for it, but that's taught me a lot about myself. And as I start to look back in my personality, I've written books, but I don't have any New York Times bestsellers or anything. And there's a part where I kind of exit and lose. I don't want to say exit, but there's a point where I go, okay, I'm on to the next thing. And you can't do that. You really have to keep going. So this has pushed me in a way that maybe in the past, I may have pivoted and just on to the next thing. Hey. I can't really do that this time. I mean, I definitely see a trend in my behavior, and I acknowledge that, I'll write a book and then, I like promote it for a few weeks. And then I'm like, okay, time to do the next one. Right. And you're only going to get so far with some of those behaviors. And so you got to kind of address some of them. If you've got a vision for your business and to take it to a certain level, you can't keep going back to the starting point and taking your pen out and writing the next book. Like you got to really invest in your time and in the right areas to get it to grow.
Yeah, it's a mindset.
For sure.
It's a mindset. Sure. Well, I'll wrap up with this. What is some advice you would have for younger entrepreneurs?
This is the craziest journey that I've ever taken. And I've done a lot of really amazing things. And you have to be comfortable with hearing no. You have to be comfortable with people not seeing your vision. You might think that, just because they're my friends or my family, that they're going to read your book or support your brand and that's not always the case. And it's okay. It is okay for all of the above. And you just keep going. You were given the vision. That's yours. And just keep going with it. You've got to be obsessed about it. The right people are going to be attracted to your vision, and it's not going to be everybody. And quite frankly, you don't want it sometimes to be everybody. You want the right people to surround you to help bring something to life. And so hearing those no's, every time I hear them, even when I was speaking and there were times where they said no. And in the back of my mind, or they would say, okay, well, maybe next year, I'd think, okay, one day you're really going to regret that, because one day it might not be as easy to get me to come on your stage. Mm-hmm. Right. And so whether or not any of that's true, that's what I tell myself. And I just keep going. But I truly believe that those were the case. Yeah. That's what I would say. Just get comfortable in the nose and let them propel you forward, and don't let them discourage you.
Yeah. I don't know where I heard this. It was some guru probably on social media who was saying, like, what if I told you you were 50 no's away from a big deal, a 6-figure deal? How fast would you get working on getting those no's? And that really hit me. I'm like, I'm going to collect my no's until I get that.
You're going to hear a lot of them. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I've certainly heard, a lot of no's, but you're going to hear the yeses. And then it's going to start to catch on. And that's just how it goes. You can't cut corners. You can't go faster than the universe is going to allow it to go. You just go with it, but just get comfortable with those no's. I love that, though. You're 50 no's away from success.
Megan, welcome to Good is in the Details, your first podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yes. So excited, overly excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And I am very interested not only in your business, but in the mindset behind your business. So tell me a bit about the origin story of Megan May Miami.
Ooh, yes. So I started out as a swimwear model myself. And what I saw is I was modeling for a lot of different swimwear brands, but I just felt like something was missing. So this brand kind of got started by, I saw a gap in the market where kind of the swimwear pieces really that I was trying on, the quality just didn't seem to be there. It felt like something where after one wash, it would fall apart. And then the sizing was a little bit off. I'm sure there's other great swimwear brands out there where this is not the case. But I just felt like I could create something where I had all of the pieces together of how I wanted it to be.
There are a lot of hangups that women and young girls experience about their body, and people talk about bikini season. How does your business address that, or does it?
Yes. So what's really interesting is the Megan May Miami swimwear. All of my bikinis have actually a little quote or a mantra inside. And it's kind of almost like a fortune cookie. I think it's kind of fun. But I've picked these quotes and they mean a lot to me. They speak to my heart. They're all meant to inspire women to feel beautiful and confident from the inside out, because I grew up being extremely self-conscious about my body. Maybe this is for a different episode, but I actually in high school had an eating disorder. So I know how it feels to be self-conscious about your body and wanting to look good, wanting to be the best, and desiring to almost have that perfect body. But we all know that simply doesn't exist. What I like to do is by choosing these quotes, I'm hoping that women will know to feel beautiful. I'm hoping that women will know to feel beautiful from the inside out. So that's what this brand is really here to inspire.
I'm glad you shared that. I think that so much of this industry has been monopolized by men or people who haven't been on the receiving end of knowing what that feels like to have that self-consciousness and like all of the pressure that is there. So I think that's really beautiful that you're putting together something for everybody. Could you give me an example of one of the quotes that's in the swimsuits? I know it's supposed to be a surprise.
Yes. Oh, yes. No, I'm trying to think of one to share. There's a few I could share. I could say a few different and then you can choose which one you want to add in there. But one is create your reality. And I think when you first read that, maybe it just seems like, okay, what does that even mean? But to me, that means we create our experience here on earth. And I feel like a lot of people feel that life kind of happens to them, that they're dealt a certain deck of cards and nothing really ends up working out right for them. But I like to turn that on its head, and I like to believe that we are co-creators of our reality. We're co-creators of the life that we live. And I feel if we choose to adopt that way of thinking, I really think that that is when we take our power back. I really think that that is when we can choose on a day-to-day basis how we want to live. And from there, if we're all, if you think about it on like a grander scheme, I think if we all choose our reality, I think we can together create a better reality, a better world.
With that in mind, tell us about the business side of what it takes, not just in terms of swimsuit, but just from the idea to success. What are some of the hurdles and the mindset that's important between the origin and then where you are now?
Yes. The first word that comes to mind for me is relentlessness. Just being relentless. That can seem like a negative word, but I see it as a very positive one because in business, you have to be relentless, meaning you have to have your goal clearly, like obviously have a clear goal in mind, but you have to be relentless in the pursuit of that goal. Because in business, we all know it's kind of a roller coaster. You have your great days, you have your not so great days, or you just sometimes want to give up. But having that relentless kind of backbone, like knowing that, reminding yourself of this is what I want, this is what I came here for, I desire this. I think having that as a core value of relentlessness, of being a go-getter, doing everything it takes to succeed, I think that's what's required.
What was it like when you had your first swimsuit like actually made and out?
Oh my gosh. When I had my first swimsuit, that was such a surreal experience because being a bikini model myself, it's like, of course, I've tried on hundreds of thousands of bikinis. I mean, so many bikinis, but to have my own and to have my name on it, to see the tag, to feel the tag in my hands and see my full name on there as a brand, that was so surreal. I didn't even realize like that was possible. Like obviously when you first start out, like I didn't realize that I could have my own brand. It was such a far dream. So to now see it is incredible, really, truly.
That's exciting. It reminds me, I mean, we talk with a lot of authors and it reminds me of when people first see their book in print and they're like, oh my God, it's here. Or music and they hear it on the radio and they're like, oh my God, it's finished. That's just so exciting. Yeah. So from when you saw the first one, how have you evolved in business and in style from that first swimsuit?
Yes. So I think I was thinking about the real moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I have a brand, was when I did my first Miami Swim Week. And so it wasn't just seeing the swimwear in my hands and holding it in my hands. It was really when I was seeing it on other models, on other women walking down the runway. And that was a dream of mine to even be in Miami Swim Week. So to go from wanting to be in Miami Swim Week, and by the way, I'm 5'3", so I'm not the standard size to be a runway model. But that was a dream of mine. So to go from wanting to walk in Swim Week to having my own swimwear in my hands to actually seeing it on the runway and getting to walk as the designer as well, that was such a surreal moment.
And how did you celebrate, or what is your support group like, or your team like, or your family like? What's the celebration?
Ooh, yes. After every single show, we all go out to dinner. We all, of course, we meet backstage and say congratulations to each other, but we like to see each other like after or outside of the business. So we always go out to dinner after the shows. We talk about what went well and just celebrate really. And so I would really say just going out to dinner as a family.
Oh,
yeah.
I love it.
That's very sweet.
What are some things that you would like to see out of the industry in swimwear? Like, what are some trends that are some really positive things? Like I said, given how a lot of people will feel self-conscious around swimwear season, but what are some positive movements that you've seen that you're a part of?
Yes, I would say we're seeing a lot more nowadays, the acceptance of different body types, and that's how it should be. Being able to celebrate all different shapes, sizes, heights, being able to see that on and off the runway. So I really like where the world is headed in terms of just being accepting of different body types, no matter where we're at on our journey and how we look. I also really like the idea where I'm seeing the swimwear industry headed is having a swimwear piece that is very versatile. So I'm seeing it where you can take, say, a one-piece swimsuit and turn it into a bodysuit where you're wearing it on the beach or at the pool, at your pool party. And then afterwards, you can go slip on your favorite pair of pants and then go out to the bar or go out to dinner with friends. So I really like the versatility of it and really taking it off the beach as well.
That's perfect, especially when you're on vacation and you want to go get drinks. Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yes,
Beautiful.
yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Could you give some words of wisdom to young people who want to start out a business and maybe they face some hurdles or they're afraid of their dream? What is some wisdom that you can give to them?
Yes, I would say my biggest piece is, and I can elaborate on this, but my biggest piece is don't quit before you even got started. I think so many people think of business, or it seems as if business is a bunch of people popping up overnight and there are these overnight successes, but that's really not the case. And I like to see it as people get rewarded in public for what they practice for years in private. So just knowing that just because you see someone else on that journey, you see them maybe succeeding and it seems like they succeeded so fast and they're so much farther ahead than you are, when you can realize that this is a journey and as long as you have that relentlessness, like I said, as long as you keep going after your dreams and not give up, that's when you're finally going to reach it. And maybe you might even see that you're in this for a year and you don't even want to do that business anymore. Maybe it pivots and turns into something else. But if you just give up, you'll never know either way. You'll never know where it could have gone. And for me, that is what keeps me in business as well, is I have big goals, but I would never take a moment back or a day back because I couldn't live thinking, what if I would have tried? I don't want to ever live with regret. So that is why I do this every day.
And who mentored you, or when you think about people who inspire you, who inspires you?
I have to think about that one. It's very interesting. When I really think back, I actually have been inspired by many men in my life. I would say not as many women. I think that is something that I could look more into this year, is really looking to women that inspire me. But somebody who has inspired me since high school was a man named Tony Horton. Have you heard of him by chance?
No.
Okay, so Tony Horton, he is the creator of P90X. Have you heard of P90X by chance? It's like a DVD.
Oh,
yes. That's going to date me, right? But it's like back in the DVD days. So I was in high school then. And as I told you, that was when I had an eating disorder. There was a moment in time where I just felt like, you know what? No more. I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to do this to myself anymore. I am going to take my life into my hands. So I started doing Tony Horton's P90X program. And I was so diligent. I was doing it every single day because I wanted something different for myself. I wanted to behave and show up in a different way for myself. So he turned out like as though I ended up actually meeting him a couple years later. That was very interesting. He was my mentor through those DVDs. He was kind of like my coach, my mentor. I really looked up to him. And one quote that will go with me forever, he said, "Do your best and forget the rest." I just feel like that would be something I would also love to tell other people that want to start a business, is just show up and do your best and then forget the rest. There's always another day.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, in so many businesses, we're looking more in terms of competition and getting on top, when really there's a lot of room to inspire and to be inspired. You know, I would imagine in an industry like anything that has to do with fashion, with swimwear, I know for me in podcasting, you know, there's this idea of like, oh, there's so many millions of people who do this. But just like you said, you know, you're going to have your unique view, experience of the world. You put that into what you've got, and you have to ignore this idea of competition or outdoing others, because it really is all about you showing up and, like you said, creating your reality, and focus on that. And I really, really like that message.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly it. You got it.
Ashunta, welcome to Good is in the Details.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm looking at your website. I'm loving the cosmetics. I want to know, what is something in this industry that you feel like is new or that you're highlighting, or how is this an expression of your creativity?
Ashunta Sharif Beauty is birthed from my years of experience in the industry. I worked in the industry 25 plus years as a celebrity makeup artist to icons like Alicia Keys and Rihanna and Jay-Z, as well as creating, the nostalgic looks of Cookie, played by Taraji P. Henson on Empire. This garnered me two-time Emmy nomination as well as a Black Reel Award nomination. The work that I have done basically is what has curated the work in terms of the brand. I wanted to be able to offer women really innovative, fun, vegan, paraben free, cruelty free, clean products, really allowed them to express themselves. Whether you're someone who's just, doing a basic face and just needs a little foundation, concealer, a brow gel, and a matte lip cream to get you through the day, we're for you, but we also are for that person who wants to use a bunch of elevated, glitter and fun stuff and neon colors that glow in the dark. So it's really just about self expression. We kind of have taken that whole like no age, no race, no sex attitude, like MAC, which is my foundation, so to speak, in makeup. I became a makeup artist through MAC in the 90s. And so that became the template for me in terms of my worldview and what, makeup should look like. It should be something that universally works for everyone and that there's something for everyone within the brand.
Yes, and I love these fun colors that you have. There's something I want to ask, since you started in the 90s at MAC, what have you noticed as far as the evolution of beauty? And since for a very, basically historically, like a lot of beauty and makeup products were marketed just to a fair skin type, what is something that was missing and that you've seen evolved to bring out the beauty and makeup in all skin tones?
Well, you've seen, especially in the last 10 years and really in the last five, the beauty industry really leaning and working towards being a more inclusive space. We're in a world right now, that outside of really Europe and America, the majority of the world are people of color. And that people of color are, are Asian descent, they're indigenous, they're Middle Eastern, so it's all of these people of color all around the world, and they have a huge array of skin complexion and tones that need servicing. And so this was actually something that's affecting even greater than the Black community. It affects the community at large. Going on tours, working with artists like Alicia and Rihanna, I got to see the world. And when you get to Southeast Asia, there are women that are literally my skin tone and they're in wrong shade foundation. You get to India, there are women that are literally my skin tone or deeper, and they're, not able to have the right shade of foundation. So this is a global problem. In the last 5 years, you really see from Fenty coming out and having, over 60 shades to be able to select from, to Lancome, as well as I know Armani Beauty, as well as L'Oreal. There's so many brands that are now, seeing the need to expand their shade range, and especially in terms of complexion product. And then the other problem was, having product that was pigmented enough to service deeper complexions. Now we've got Complexion Fit, but that navy blue liner that's really gorgeous on that caramel skin woman is not really that navy blue on a really darker skin, rich toned woman, leaning more towards those midnight blue blackish hues. It's just really about finding those inclusive products. And so that's where we fit that space, because we wanted to make sure that we were leaning in that direction and that we were making products that literally could universally also work for everyone. So we have like Thermal Blush, for example, which works on all complexions, all skin tones. It's viral on TikTok, but it's a clear blush when you look at it, oil, or a clear jelly if you get the cream. And literally it will pH change to fit your body's perfect blush tone. So it's like a chemical reaction in terms to your pH chemistry. And so it works universally for everybody. Finding those kind of products that really just fit in those boxes. And I think the industry is doing better at finding new brands and really uplifting those new brands and bringing them to the forefront. And I think also too, the audience is doing that, right? The customer, the consumer out here is like, hey, I'm Middle Eastern, but I'm not fair skin. I'm more of an African American shade tone. I really need stuff that works for me. And so, that's what Ashunta Sharif Beauty is trying to do. Just really continue to uplift not just my brand, but BIPOC beauty brands that really service the need of these people.
Yes, I teach, I teach a philosophy class, and one of the classes is on questions about or debates in sexuality. And we'll talk about gender stereotypes or norms for women. And I'm Gen X, so I'll tell my students about the beauty standards from the 70s and how there's been such a shift. And so I'm wondering, from your experience in cosmetics and in the entertainment industry, was there a moment for you where you were like, oh, this is a game changer?
I would say definitely for me, one of the things that really became a game changer for me was Fenty. When Fenty came out, especially working with Rihanna and knowing her from being that young girl fresh off of the island of Barbados and being with her through various iterations of her career, I just really was blown away, at just the shade range, because that's how she launched. She launched with complexion. And it just was really like kind of like a really big statement. I mean, I think even like the Wall Street Journal covered it. It was huge because we hadn't seen so many shade ranges available like ever. So like by one brand, like like
Yeah,
you literally would have to go to one brand to get something, go to another brand to get something. So that was like really like a whoa, this is a big deal in terms of the industry, and her being who she is, being a global phenomenon, a global icon, and just a music pop star, saying, here, boom, here's these 60 shades. And I think everyone kind of took suit afterwards within the industry to either get caught up with, releasing some new shades or like getting into the lab and developing them.
absolutely. What's on the horizon for you? What's next? What would you like to see happen, or what are you excited about when it comes to makeup or your business or the industry?
Well, one of the things I'm most excited about is actually this past Friday, on Good Friday, I went to speak at the White House on a panel regarding diversity and inclusion within the beauty industry and the retail industry. So I was super honored to represent small Black owned, women founded businesses, and also to be the champion for BIPOC beauty that I am, to be the representative there to speak about a lot of the things that you and I are talking about right now in this podcast. And so that is something I'm really excited to see, that dialogue with the White House, with VP Kamala Harris and her esteemed associates, continue this conversation moving forward. And it was just really an honor to be in that space. I'm kind of still like living on that moment and preparing for the modern day wife. But yeah, just really excited about continuing those conversations with people who are on the ground, who can actually move not just the needle forward, but legislation forward, move grant opportunities forward, resources forward, BIPOC beauty brand founders, because we're actually Black owned brands are actually funded less than 2% compared to their white counterparts. And BIPOC beauty, I couldn't even give you the statistics. I'm sure it's less than that. We're talking about indigenous and people of color brands. And I even want to go as far as to include brands that are founded by LGBTQIA plus. So all of these others, who are creating brands for the communities that they service, that's who I'm championing for.
Congratulations on your panel at the White House. What was that like? Were you nervous? Like, tell me about those moments before you get, or when you get the invitation. I want to know.
Well, it all kind of happened really fast. It happened in real time. I was asked Tuesday, and by Friday, I was there. Basically, just vetted to make sure I was who I was, and I had the knowledge to be able to come and really add to the conversation. And I wasn't nervous when I was on the panel. Actually, when I'm talking, I'm really pretty comfortable. It was all of the leading up to it. So traveling there, I took my husband with me. So I needed my support system. My husband is my best support system for anything that's going to require me to put myself out there in that way. He usually helps me to calm myself down. That was it. I had my security blanket.
Yeah.
And I was good. But yeah, I was a bit nervous because the people on the panel that I was speaking with, these are women who are 2, 3, 4-time PhDs. One of the women was a co-founder of the Crown Act, and I don't know if you know anything about the Crown Act, but they've literally moved legislation forward to fight against hair
Oh, yes,
discrimination.
hair.
And so so yeah, and then we had the head of diversity inclusion for L'Oreal, the founder of the Black Beauty roster. So all of these really amazing high profile women, high elite minded women. And so that was the only place like that, I'm a makeup artist, I don't have a PhD in those types of things, but what I have learned is that life experience gives you a PhD. And
Mm-hmm.
And also, just all of the wisdom you gain from working over 10,000 hours at something. And so, I've done probably 3 times that, right? Being a professional makeup artist, working with the caliber of people that I've worked with. So I wasn't nervous about it because it's something like I said to you, I'm super passionate about it. Even if I didn't have a brand, I'd be out on the forefront championing for it because I do see the need as a makeup artist. I am working with people from all walks of life. And, when I get someone who is Asian descent, but Southeast Asian specifically, and has a certain undertone, and she may not necessarily be categorized in that African American skin tone because her skin may be really yellow undertone, but she's still very brown. It's like, really trying to service the needs of my clients who are literally from all walks of life. It's just something I'm passionate about. And I just believe like as the world that we live in, like you said, a lot of the products in the past have been really geared towards not towards others. I like to say, I don't like to just say whites, but others with lighter skin, lighter complexion. And there's so many interracial couples with biracial kids, that are affected by this. This is very multi-layered. And I think sometimes people, even like if I'm a mom or a dad and I have a biracial kid, sometimes you don't even think about how that'll affect your kid with, the kind of hair products they'll need, what kind of skincare products they'll need, what kind of color products they'll need. It affects all of that stuff. So these brands are necessary and we need to lean into them and support them. And even, I tell people like, I know it's not about just capitalism in your face, but it's also about like really putting things on the shelf that are necessary. And I always say to people, you can replace one thing here and there. Like if you've been using a product for 10 years, that product's good. Try something new for this month and just see how that product works for you. Maybe a new believer of a new product line. I know people are creatures of habits and sometimes they're afraid to try new things, but that's how you have to just put yourself out there. And I always say like sometimes if it's a color product like ours where it's bold and in your face, that's where you do it on the weekend or when you go to a concert or when you go out with your friends or you have brunch. This is when you have fun. This is when you come away from the normalcy of everyday mundane makeup and say, you know what, I'm going to use fruity neon UV eyeliner from Ashunta Sharif Beauty. There's always a time and a place, right, to have fun and try these new brands and new products that are out there that are made for everyone really to use, but have a little bit of specialness for BIPOC people.
Tracey, welcome to Good is in the Details.
Hi.
Hi, Care. You're the founder, the CEO, and chief chemist. That's a lot of hats. Do you have a favorite
Right.
hat when it comes to this?
Definitely a chemist is my favorite because I'm actually a chemical engineer, so I love to make things.
Oh, that's really cool. I taught for a while engineering ethics. That was one because I'm a
Oh,
philosophy
okay.
professor, and so I used to teach that. So I had a lot of engineers who were interested. That's so cool. Okay, so take me back to your undergrad days when you're studying chemical engineering. Did you ever have this vision in mind of where you are now?
I did not. I actually, when I went to school for chemical engineering, I wanted to be a fragrance chemist.
Mm.
And it's so funny because I saw it, and how I knew about a fragrance chemist is because I would watch soap operas with my grandmother. There was a fragrance chemist on Young and the Restless, and I was like, that's cool, and that's definitely interesting and something that I have never seen or even heard of, that a job actually exists like that. And I was young. I was just like, okay, that's the direction I want to go in. But then my dad is an electrical engineer, so that plays a part in my loving math and engineering. But then, my love for chemistry and making things and stuff like that brought me to the world of beauty, actually, as a cosmetic chemist. I decided to get my degree in chemical engineering because I wanted to do the processing of beauty products. Entails like everything.
So you went from a male, because as a student, I know that when I was teaching engineering ethics, it was mainly engineering students and it's male dominated. There would be like maybe 2 or 3 women students.
Exactly.
That was like, so you go from a male dominated field into skincare, which is a woman's field. So what was that transition like from like your undergrad days to now skincare?
I'm trying to figure out the word. It was reassuring. It was profound in the fact that reassuring in the fact that I can do this, that this was meant for me, and learning from a lot of women. There were still, some men there as well, but learning from women in the field, coming from a classroom of male peers, and there were only 2 other females in my class. That was amazing to actually enter in and learn a lot, to develop color cosmetics, skincare, hair care, even learn how to develop nail care products.
I would love to know some of the science behind your product. So what is something from your chemistry background that goes into your skincare? What's
Sure.
unique about what you're doing? This is very, very cool. We normally talk about, like, when we talk about skincare, we'll talk about the results, but I think this is the first time I'm getting a window into, wait a minute, what is the science behind deciding how much of what gets in or what's excluded?
So for me, being, a chemical engineer and coming from the chemistry side of things, where I've worked on the bench, also, I would say production, like as a process engineer. So taking something from a small 100-gram batch on up to a couple thousand kilos in production and making sure, everything is compliant. But in development and looking at ingredients, studying how, they actually work on the skin, throughout the layers of the skin, how much is actually recommended, putting together ingredients that actually mesh well and provide the results that consumers are looking for. So it's something that, I work with raw material suppliers extensively, and the type of ingredients that they offer, the type of testing that they do, what level of ingredients they may suggest to test that, but then what makes sense for the type of products that I actually want to launch. And with a care is like all about rebalancing the microbiome in order to achieve healthy scalp and skin. In the market today, a lot of people are more familiar with the microbiome of the gut, and a lot of that starts with, having a healthy gut, then entails, having just a healthy, healthy life, healthy, what is it? Not less sickness, more energy. A lot of people don't think about that when it comes to our skin and scalp. With a care and looking at ingredients that actually rebalance the microbiome, which is the outermost layer of our scalp and skin. And that's where imperfections actually start to happen, which means you have an uneven balance of good and bad bacteria that will start, dryness, dullness, or anything like psoriasis or eczema. And I would say people also don't realize your microbiome is affected every day. It's almost like the same way that you wear or need to wear SPF every day. It's the same way that you need to protect or rebalance your microbiome to really help bring it back to its healthy state, in addition to other products that you may be using to have the healthy skin and healthy scalp.
What is something you're most proud of with your work?
Recently, I launched a product called Beauty Refresh, and it's a multi-use treatment powder. And again, it serves dual purpose in terms of it being like a hair mask as well as a face mask that helps like detoxify, purify, as well as moisturize, in comparison to a lot of powder masks that are in the market now. And with that product, I've actually achieved certification that it is specifically kind to the biome, meaning it doesn't disrupt the biome, it won't affect or interrupt, your microbiome, to help keep it within a healthy state. And then also I have a certification of that product being made safe. Those are 2 things that I would say definitely happy about. And the product is also, I've got finalists for best green products with Well Spa. But in general, with my brand, I launched in 2018, and with this organization called WML, Care was nominated and won for 2021 Entrepreneur of the Year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, these types of achievements have been enjoyable since starting the brand, and it's just something that helps me continue to do what I do.
That's fantastic. I guess you must have like a wonderful team of support, and you can celebrate. Like, how did you celebrate when you won that award?
So, I guess it's like as far as a team, it's like, yeah, team of me. I do have some people that do help, but they've been more a part of the brand. I would say the last, 2 years, maybe 3. But I mean, in terms of celebration and support, definitely a lot of support from family and friends. They've definitely been, our biggest cheerleaders and supporters of the brand, and just celebrating with them milestones like this has just been amazing.
How do you stand out, and what keeps you going when there are a lot of other businesses that are in skincare?
Yeah, for me, and especially anybody that would be starting out, definitely, I would say look for a niche that is unique not only to you but also to the market. A lot of people do feel as though, there are a lot of competitors, there's a lot of saturation, but nobody can tell your story. From that perspective, like a care that I'm aware of is the first multi-use microbiome brand to really offer rebalancing the microbiome for healthy scalp and skin. Most brands that you see in the market are just for the skin or just for the hair or just for the body, versus a care providing multiple benefits, multiple treatments, and multiple uses with their products. So that's how a care definitely stands out, not only from being multi-use for the microbiome, but then also being natural, using ingredients with clinical efficacy, and then the packaging being recyclable. But then for every order of a care, there's a mangrove tree planted in Madagascar in order to really give back to the ecosystem. We go full circle. That is the way that I've taken a care and put it in a different point of difference to stand out within the market. And that would be, the type of advice I would give to anybody that was looking to start their own business. Like I said, one, nobody is you. Nobody can tell your story. From that, also look for something that is, niche to what may be out there that somebody is not telling, in order to offer that point of difference. I mean, for me, what keeps me going is, I've always had a love for products, creating products for consumers that create a cult following, that see the results, that have products or use products that are less harmful, not only for them, but for the environment. It's just something within me that I love to see or hear when consumers use a product and they have positive results from it. So that is one of the things that definitely just keeps me going with the brand itself, or just, as far as my brand itself, keeps me going from that perspective.
Yeah, I see this. You've got on your website, plant biodiversity, clean ingredients,
Yes.
cruelty-free. That's all really beautiful. I mean, that's one of the things I think
Thank
is
you.
one of the things I think is so interesting about business is that we sometimes talk about it as though it has no, like it's different from our everyday life. But I can tell just from your website and from your background in engineering that this is really an expression of you. Like, you are flourishing, and everything about this it's just very, very cool. It's smart, it's scientific, it's generous. This is just really, really great work.
Thank you.
I love it.
Good is in the Details is produced by Dr. Gwendolyn Dolske and Rudy Salo. If you're listening to the show you're enjoying, please hit that follow button, that subscribe button, take a screenshot of this and share it with your friends, put it on social media, tag us on Instagram, Good is in the Details Pod. We love hearing from you. DM us, let us know what are some topics, philosophical topics that you would like for us to cover, and we're more than happy to check that out. Remember, go to patreon.com/goodisinthedetails for extra content and a way for you to support the show. Also, check out on our show notes the links to all of their businesses. Thank you, Megan, Jen, Tracey, Ashunta. It was an absolute pleasure and joy to talk to you and to hear your story, to hear about your success, and to be inspired by this. Okay, until next time, bye.